Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. We're on location deep in the Build a Lot forest, and in today's video we're going to be testing out and discussing the Fiskars line of tools. Stay tuned. In today's video we're going to be testing out numerous Fiskars tools. Now these are tools that I already own. I didn't buy them just for this video. I didn't get them given to me by Fiskars to try out. I paid for these with my own money, and I've already owned these tools, so let's try them out. I'm going to tell you which ones I recommend, which ones I don't, and just some general history on them. So the Fiskars brand is a Finnish brand from Finland. They came out in 1649 is when the company started. So not only are they the oldest active business in Finland, they're one of the oldest companies in the whole world, which I think is pretty cool. And they still make tools to this day. Where the tools are made, I do believe, is going to vary. I know some of my tools are not made in Finland, they're made in Vietnam. So I know Fiskars has different headquarters around the world. So if you look online, it appears like they're all made in Finland, which I know for a fact is not true. They may be based out of Finland, but not actually all made there. I think some of them are, maybe even the majority, but I know some of them are not. So let's get into today's video. So the first tool we're going to talk about is the 15-inch pruning saw. So the 15-inch pruning saw is going to be ideal for hand cutting some trees and limbs that might be a little too thick for maybe a machete or a brush axe, and you don't want to quite pull out your gasoline chainsaw. This might be just the thing. So if you just want to cut a few quick pieces of firewood, this might be just the tool for you. Next up, we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite Fiskars tools, the 9-inch brush axe. You might also see this called the chopping machete, but it's the same thing, it's a brush axe. This is going to be much thicker than your standard machete. It's going to have a shorter blade, so it's much better for chopping. It's almost a combination axe and machete, but this is the 9-inch brush axe. Let's try it out. So as you guys saw, this thing's a real dominator in the woodlands. Next up, we're going to try the 18-inch machete saw. Now I have to be completely honest with you, I've never tried this. So I'm going to be showing you on camera my first ever time with this. Obviously this is made for lighter brush, saplings, you know, ferns, briars, things like that. It's not nearly as thick as the brush axe we just showed, but it does have the saw feature, which I think is cool. I'm going to try out the saw and the machete blade and see how they work. Let's go see. Alright, so for the first test, I have to say I'm not all that impressed. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but pretty good glint in the blade already, and that was from hitting one rock. Yeah, you could argue you shouldn't be hitting rocks with this, but obviously it wasn't intentional, and you're bound to hit rocks with these kind of tools. It's just the nature of the beast. You're clearing trails, you don't know what you're running into. You could be running into logs, rocks, stumps, who knows? So that's not too good in my opinion. It should be made with a little tougher of an edge than that. This isn't a fine knife, it's a machete. It's meant to chop. But let's try out the saw function. Alright, so I would say the saw function works a little bit better than the blade function. I got about halfway, maybe about a third to half a way through this piece of red maple, which is a pretty hard wood, much harder than something like pine or hemlock or fir, but let's go back to the drawing board. So that's going to be the 18-inch machete saw. I really can't recommend this at this point. I've only used it this one day, but the machete function isn't that impressive. It really was struggled to get through those 1/4 to 3/8 inch thick saplings, which machete like this should have no problem getting through that diameter woody material. And I hit one rock by accident and I already got a glint in the machete. The saw functioned a little better, but the saw function is better than nothing, but it's not nearly as good as the pruning saw. So if I had a choice, I would just get the pruning saw and the brush axe and skip over this. Next up, we're going to be talking about extendable pruners. Now, I like that they're extendable. They allow you to reach up much higher. You want to clip some branches on something. They got a 1.5 inch cutting capacity, and you know, there's really not a ton to these. The biggest issue I've had with pruners in the past, I actually owned a small pair of Fiskars pruners. They were much smaller, maybe, I don't know, a foot long handle or so. The problem I've had is you exert too much force and you end up snapping the jaw function where the blades meet. It ends up popping apart. I've had 2 or 3 different brands, some of them big like this, some little ones, and they all break. So I think what I really need is a bypass lopper or a ratcheting lopper, something that's going to tighten up, that you can't just muscle your way in and end up breaking the tool. But let's try these out. So we got some good material here, ranging anywhere from about 1 inch up to 2 inches. So we'll see if they really can cut 1.5 inches. About 1.5 inches material right here. All right, so those were the 1.5 inch loppers. I will say I noticed I could see it flexing when I was cutting that 1.5 inch. Let's see, I think it was an oak. But I definitely would not want to go over the 1.5 inches. I think if you did that often, or over that amount, bigger diameter, I think you could end up breaking this. Like I said, this is the weak point in any lopper I've ever used. So I think loppers are one of those things you really got to be careful how big a material you try to cut. But for anything under 1.5 inches, this is going to be much quicker than the saw or the machete, in my opinion, and much more precise. Next up is going to be the 15-inch splitting hatchet. So, what is this tool going to be good for? Kindling. I wouldn't really recommend using this to try to split logs. I'm going to show you right now. You're going to have a hard time getting enough power because there's not a lot of weight or handle length to this tool. But for small splitting jobs, kindling, things like that, you could probably even, you know, notch the ends of sticks or make them into points if you're doing bushcraft, things like that. This tool is definitely a good thing to own. So we got a piece of 8-inch diameter red oak. I do want to point out, I know I've pointed out in the past, but this is a 20-inch long piece of firewood. Most people are going to split more like 14 to 16 inches. That extra 6 inches or 4 inches of firewood length makes a huge, huge difference in how easy it is to split. But let's see if this is even splittable with such a little tool. So as you can see, it's got some power. It may not be as powerful as this Big Brothers, which we're going to get into next, but this little guy packs a punch. So the next tool that we're going to discuss is going to be one of Fiskars' most well-known types of tools, and that's going to be their splitting axes. This is an X25, has a 27-inch handle. They also have the X27, which is probably the most popular tool of all time and one of the most well-regarded, most sought-after splitting axes of all time, the X27. So it's a little confusing. X25 you would think would have a 25-inch handle, X27, 27-inch handle, but they're actually not. The X25 has a 27-inch handle, and the X27 has a 36-inch handle. So for a taller person, you would be better off with a longer handle so you can get a better swing. But for people, I would say up to, you know, maybe 5'10" or so, I think this tool would work just fine. I do wish I had gotten a longer X27, but I do have a bunch of other splitting axes, mauls, as well as my super split, so it's not really a big deal, but let's go try it out. So this is going to be a 9-inch piece of red oak. Let's see how this one goes. All right, for our final tool, we're going to talk about the big boy, Fiskars Isocore Maul. Now, this is an 8-pound maul. Obviously, any maul is going to have a much bigger, wider head than an axe. It's going to be heavier, and you also have the ability to use it as a hammer to pound wedges, either wedges into trees, steel wedges into your wood, etc. But this is meant for much bigger wood. It's going to tire you out quicker, but it's going to take less swings for that big wood. So let's go see it in action. So for our final test, we're going to try it out on this 10-inch piece of red oak. So that's going to do it for today's video, friends. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was fun testing out these different Fiskars tools with you and showing you how good they are, whether or not you want to purchase them, etc. See you in the next one. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.